I don't know if we'll have anything to vote on tonight anyway.
Right.
We do have a forum. Well, Amanda couldn't vote.
Yeah, it's a workshop, I'm not sure we should vote for it. So,
Yeah, you wouldn't vote, this is just discussion item, what do you want to do in the future?
Give it 2 minutes.
Yeah, vote on going home.
Excuse me, after
the whole
all this
life.
work, we won't let you go home.
We'll read it.
Looks like we got a whole pile of,
yeah, the red light's on, what's that?
stuff to consider. We heard from Molotov?
Pardon me?
Heard from Molotov?
No, I haven't heard from Mo. I've emailed everybody, and sometimes.
You're probably doing what I was doing, sitting in front of a long stove.
Yes,
I
yes.
really want to go to that meeting.
Well, we may have a cure for that.
What's that?
You'll find out.
Summer.
Besides summer.
Okay, well, it's 7:01, so might as well begin the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no ordinary business, but deal with. There's no minutes, there's no special meetings, we got discussion items. First item on the discussion is discuss training opportunities for the planning board. We do have, these a couple of, you want to explain or should I?
Well, it would be a Zoom meeting, and one of them, we have one available. We should pertain to both the Board of Appeals and the planning board. When I'm reading the information, there's one available from 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock on the 24th day of February. And then there's another one available on April 22nd. What I can understand is we'll do this at home and just sign in. We wouldn't have to come into the office.
Yes. Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Catherine Rose, Town Manager. I also checked beyond the trainings that are available because those are for both Planning Board and Board of Appeal members. And they talk about how they're primarily for new and less experienced Planning Board and Board of Appeals members, but a great refresher for long-term or long-time members too, or people coming back to the board. So I did talk with the Kennebec Valley Council of Governments about specific training, specific to Pittsfield, and Joel Greenwood, who was the interim acting director between executive directors again, is back to his regular planning duties, and he said he could come any Monday from the dates I gave him of Monday, February 22nd, going down to Monday, March 29th, to provide a training on what you would like on the ordinances, if you want to talk about those. I was approached about how to amend ordinances, how do we know what to amend, what should be in the ordinances, and questions on the ordinances. So I did call and talk with Joel, and when I spoke with him, we went over, at the most, we'd go over the subdivision ordinance, site plan review, shoreline zoning, and zoning ordinance, but frankly, I think you probably would do 2 of them. Or you might want to do both this, and for some members may want the Zoom session. So it's up to you, but Joel would be able to come. You would have a workshop either here or we can do it by Zoom, which then leads me to a request from the mayor in that we've talked about and transferred the council over to totally Zoom now. So we are on Zoom that's implanted into the town hall streams. And so after figuring out that when you put them together, it creates an extra copy of the Zoom, so you get the vibration or echo. After we got that out, it worked really good. You can see each of the counselors or in your place, the planning board members. You can hear really well. Everybody can see each other, and you can conduct business, as well as have the developers and everything on the Zoom with you while we're in these interesting times here. So that's an option that's available that we would like to try out. You would have to have a computer at home or phone so that you can do that. We do have a couple of extra laptops upstairs, very basic ones that can be signed out. So that's an area that the town council has gone over to, which worked really well, once you put it all together. And the citizens at home usually have trouble hearing us. There's echoes in the room and everything. But with the two together, the town hall streams, which is the cameras that you have up here and the Zoom embedded in it, people called up and said they could hear really well and they could see us rather than being tiny little people that sometimes they don't know who everybody is because it's so far away. So the mayor did want me to talk to you about that, to see if you would do that. You have the most people that are coming in a room, so you have probably the most risk for a meeting. And then the training would go from there as to, if we were all on Zoom, the training would be on Zoom. If we were in person, the training would be in person. Or could be on Zoom, and some people are here in person.
Anybody want to got anything to add, throw into that mix? How do people feel about Zooming rather than actually showing up here?
Doesn't matter to me.
I'm fine with it. I use Zoom multiple times every day. So,
Yeah, as long as we can hear each other, you know, which we should be able to if we're each on our own laptop.
You could actually try the Zoom on something like a workshop, so you're testing it out on something where you don't have developers in front of you. That might be good, or a training session.
Yeah, I was thinking of this information thing that is available to us on the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know how Zoom works. If we did it here, is there going to be a moderator?
If you do it here and you're having the Zoom come from MMA, it'll just show up like you're having a training video.
Okay. Because sometimes it's hard to control the people talking, and you know, it can get kind of out of control, actually.
Yeah, MMA's programs, the last couple I've been on, they haven't been a planning board or zoning board, but they already had the questions ahead of time, and they didn't have input. So I'm not sure if they're running everything that way or just ran the two sessions I went to that way.
Well, I think it would, I don't know.
the thing I'll note with Zoom is whoever is hosting should feel really comfortable with the program.
Yeah.
And with, you know, how to limit
How to mute people.
how to limit people, how to mute people, how to, you know, control the waiting room.
And
It'd also probably be a really good idea for us to have a co-host so that somebody can moderate a chat or monitor a chat while so those sorts of considerations I think are important to a well-functioning Zoom meeting. But if it's run well, I think it's a perfectly reasonable approach.
So the session from MMA would just come in as a Zoom session and be up there. They would be running the whole thing.
Right. I meant for like us for meetings.
Yeah, if you did, I'd start out with like a training or a workshop first so that we can get used to it. But once you get used to it, it's just that everybody's face is really big on the screen and everybody can see each other, and some people are shyer. But you can hear very well. You just have to learn to raise your hand. And I have to say that, you know, I understand why we should do this, and it is a good thing to do, but as the host, I'm not the happiest person. But I'm used to it too now.
Yeah. I know whenever I know two people try to talk at the same time in different rooms, it just doesn't work. It's okay by me, but I don't know when.
We could try something easy first.
You know, I'd like to do the MMA workshop this next one coming up and see how that works out. Well, yeah, I know how they work out. I just
Will that be on Zoom? The MMA workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, all their sessions are on Zoom and have been for, well, since last year. So the MMA workshop is on either February 24th, coming right up, and we can sign you up, or the next one is in April, on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. My favorite day.
The February 24th one is fine with me.
Yeah, it's fine with me too.
That'd be a
Seven
one
o'clock.
hour.
I think it's at 4 o'clock.
4 to 7.
Did you have, do you have the times on the one coming right up, Steve? Is it 4?
It's 4 to 7:30 p.m.
4 to 7.
And that is the February 24th,
Yeah.
not the April
And
22nd.
if anybody wants to go to the April 22nd one, it's at the same time.
Okay.
I'll have to leave at 7, but I can attend the February 24th one.
Okay, so if we think everybody can come here, we'll do it, I'll sign you up, but we have to pay for it, so we want to make sure everybody can. So we got firm commitments from Simone, Royce.
Can this be done from our house? You know, we
You
use
can
this?
do it from your house, you get a link, yeah. We'll sign it up so that you, we'll have to use your home emails. Yeah. Ron, do you think you're all set, or you need to check your schedule?
No, I can do it.
Okay, good.
Well, I'd like to do it. I have a meeting at 4 o'clock, but I can see if I can reschedule it.
Okay,
It would be 4 to 5 if I have to stay at the other meeting.
okay, well, you could still, you would get like over half of that.
Yep.
Yeah, so that would be good. Right, so set?
Yep.
All right, excellent. Then we'll have to check on Tom. I almost forgot about you, you were so quiet. Are you the Zoom guy?
You know what he wants to do. I've done it once or twice, family things, but, yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's easy when you're the person that just clicks in, it's not so easy the other way.
You can just listen, right? I mean, you don't have to have.
No, you
video
don't have
on.
to do
You can
anything.
turn
You
the
just
video
have to
off.
make sure you have a
Yeah.
microphone, you don't have to ask any questions,
Right.
you just listen.
Yeah, you gotta make, whatever you have has to be able to connect to Zoom.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know?
I've got 3 teachers in my family, that's all they're doing, so,
Ah.
not my house.
They'll be expert to help you.
Yeah.
On my tablet, I had to put the app on, but the other thing just comes up, so.
So Brent, you're available?
Yeah, I'll do it. What day is it anyway, so?
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday. And so I'll have to call Morris and Mark to see what I can do.
Who's Morris?
Mo.
Mo.
Well, that's his official name.
Morris.
All right, so would you like to do a training with Joel too, and we could set that up so it was totally Zoom?
That's okay with me. I don't know how Joel feels about it.
Oh, he said he'd be all set. He's like the expert at
Yeah.
Zoom. Maybe we'll even have him host it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, because it should be on the town hall streams. We'll figure that out.
Okay, yeah, let me see.
So that would
March.
be a Monday night.
Yeah, March 8th.
So that would be the 22nd, you said?
Whatever day you'd like it to be.
Yeah,
He's
March 8th is
available.
our next planning board meeting,
Yeah.
so we might want to schedule a meeting other than a
Mhm.
regular business meeting.
Yeah, in case you have applicants.
Yeah. So, I think,
So if people have their calendars, they can check and see when what Mondays they're available.
What time would this training be?
It can be whenever you'd like it. He says he's completely free.
No, what's Joel doing?
Yeah, Joel is the planner at KB Concord,
Right.
is here in town. He would go over the ordinances with you, any questions that you have, items on how to amend them, what should be amended. You could look at the subdivision ordinance if after you look at these materials, you decide you'd like more. Or you could do a different ordinance, or both.
Does it cost anything for?
No, there's no cost, it's part of our dues.
No.
No, since we got a $1.2 million project, I figure that our dues of approximately $5,000 have been paid for a long time.
I think from Joel's point of view, it'd be easier to zoom it because he'd have all his materials right there. You wouldn't
Yeah.
have to lug things into this room.
Yes, this is true. He is working from home, so he's here in town.
Yeah.
So if you want to pick out a Monday, or a couple of Mondays that work for you all, or if Mondays are available.
Well, the next Monday after the 22nd would be March 1st.
So probably March 1st, if that wasn't too much in a row, or the 3rd March, Monday. So
You
that
mean the
kept
15th?
Yeah,
the
so you
third
kept
Monday.
away from your regular meeting.
Yeah.
That sounds better.
The 15th.
Yeah. It gives you a break.
So, first meeting is March 15th then, right?
Yeah.
Yep, March 15th. All right, that will be a Zoom, and we'll try a town hall stream for that. All right. And so are there any ordinances you'd like to go over, new numbers, long-term numbers? I did say older numbers. If not, we'll figure it out before we get there.
I think
the
that
subdivision ordinance is probably the most
the
pertinent.
subdivision one would be the one that we would want some advice on. I
Okay.
don't know how everybody else feels, but
Do we have questions on the shoreline zoning ordinance? The zoning's pretty,
no.
Common sense.
I mean, there's no gray area, right? Either you gotta do it or you don't have
Yeah.
to do it, right? So you kind of have to, the state mandates that, I assume, right?
It does, it's just how much do you have to do is the question. Which is why we're going through the ordinance, just to make sure we understand if this has anything to do with why we don't have major subdivisions or bigger subdivisions. Or is it just one of the elements? All right, so looks like we've got a workshop scheduled on March 15th with Katie Carr, planner, Joel Greenwood, and we'll determine the time, but is everybody all set for 7 o'clock, or would you like it earlier?
I personally would like it either earlier or half an hour later,
Okay, 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock or 7:30.
Okay. So does 6 o'clock work for the rest of you in your work schedules?
It would work for me if I'm gonna be home anyway.
How about you, Tom?
Does it work for
I never
Paul?
know till the day. Every day is good or bad.
Is 7 o'clock more workable?
Yeah, is
It
it
doesn't
better?
make any difference. It's either good or it's bad.
Either he's gonna Zoom or he's not gonna Zoom, right?
Correct.
Well, Zoom to you. Not for Zoom.
No, if it's a bad day. It'll be a-
All right, let's try for 6 o'clock then.
Okay.
Okay. All right, good. All right, 2 items down. Now the major one is on your agenda.
Did you say there's one more item?
Yes, your regular business, which is the subdivision, which, well, people were putting it in their phone, I didn't want to say anything. So I said I'd help out in the interim until the code officer had more time in his schedule, or we had an alternative. So I did put together some information on other subdivision ordinances after a review of your current subdivision ordinance. And the subdivision ordinance review was one of the items that the town council wanted to have addressed. If you think back over the history of the town, at least the last 20 years, there's only been one major or large subdivision, and that because of when it was approved and started to be built, the economy fell through, so they had it decertified. So you have had a variety of smaller ones, but they're almost always family orientated. The family is dividing up the land. There's been a passing in the with the heirs, and so they divided up the property after that. So we wanted to look at the subdivision ordinance because it does seem very cumbersome and hard to get through if it's a large subdivision, but still we do want to protect the town. So I went through the entire subdivision ordinance a few times, looked at other subdivision ordinances, and then rather than inundating you with massive amounts of information, I picked out just an overall review of the subdivision ordinance and items I found that we might want to look at. And then I've provided copies of some excerpts or pages from ordinances that were well written and have items in them that we don't have or might provide more clarification. So to start out, does everybody have their subdivision ordinance because they've got their book with them? Okay, so in your subdivision ordinance, Article 4 is Administrative Procedures, and that is page 15-5. And in the administrative procedures, the last two sentences talk about action not being taken on applications that do not appear on the board's written agenda. So I did want to bring to your attention, although you haven't done any final agency actions on approving these little family or tiny subdivisions, that is an item that's come up before, and you may want to look at that section if you rewrite the subdivision ordinance, because families have shown up in here, you've added them on the agenda even though it wasn't on the agenda, or you've actually talked to them and not added it on the agenda, and then went through details with them and then brought it back later, but no final agency action. But that might be something you'd want to look at if you want to be more flexible. But right now, that's an item that just should be addressed on going forward. Obviously, if you had a massive subdivision, it wouldn't just be added, or people wouldn't just show up and start working on their subdivision with you. There's going to be proper public notice to all of the abutters. But on the tiny ones, that has happened. Page 15-5, Article 5, the pre-application meeting sketch plan and site inspection. This on minor subdivisions has often, most of these items have been waived, which I think is fine if they're minor subdivisions, but you do a lot of waiving for the family ones and for the tiny ones, splitting off to a daughter or a son. And I don't think that that's an issue at all. You have a waiver at the end. It would be hard to waive a lot of these items if you had a major subdivision come in. Going to the minor and the major subdivisions, the minor subdivision is the one that just has sort of a one-step process. It doesn't have a preliminary and a final plan. The minor subdivision just has the plan. And so I talked with Steve, and this issue's come up before. As far as we can find, there is no definition of a minor subdivision or a major subdivision. And I ran it through the state law, and there's no definition. So I did find this in several other ordinances in which towns had copied a state version of the ordinance. And it may be when the subdivision law was revised a number of years ago, the definitions got taken out. So we may want to add a definition to our ordinance. Some of the ordinances I looked at had definitions. In my past town, what I'm used to is if you have 5 lots, that is a major subdivision. If you have less, it's a minor subdivision. I did put a definition in that I found in a couple of the ordinances I looked at for a minor and a major. They also talked about if you're extending the public water or sewer or building a road, that made it a major subdivision. It doesn't have to be that way. It would be up to you as to what you wanted to do. I have seen minor subdivisions and major define the difference between them as 3, but most of the ordinances had 5. You have to use common sense what does fit for your community. So if you go through and amend the subdivision ordinance, I would think that you would want to put a definition in for minor subdivision and major subdivision.
When we do that, when we have this discussion with them?
I think you discussed this before.
Yeah.
Well, what was that?
Didn't we have that discussion before? major, minor subdivisions?
We did, it was when I first joined, we were
Yeah.
dividing up
Yeah.
the farm amongst 2 or 3 different
Out on,
kid, like heirs, yeah.
yeah.
I don't think we ever.
There's a Beans Corner.
Beans Corner, yeah.
Yeah. We need to clarify it. It's come up a few times over the years. But I went through the whole thing again, and I went to talk to Steve, and he doesn't remember a definition of it.
I think we,
One of the things that we might want to put in our definition is if the lots don't require anything but driveways. If they, you know, the development drives them, so there has to be a road that multi-people use. We would want that as to be a major. And if there's no, just an individual driveway, I think that would be minor.
Yep, that's a good point. Some of the definitions that I saw did state that if you had, did not have the road, that it became a minor as long as you didn't go over too many lots. So that's true because it's not as complicated. All right, going on to the second page. The smaller subdivisions are the family-orientated ones. In the timing that's listed in the subdivision ordinance, that has not always been followed. Even when there were public hearings, sometimes you did everything at once. But again, they were the smaller subdivisions, so it really wasn't an issue. But if you want more flexibility, you may want to put some sort of extra condition in there or extra section about timing. I didn't see that, going back through your records, that you waived the timing, but you sort of did without making the motion. It's just something to clarify. If we're going to make changes, we might as well make it so it works for you. The major subdivisions are a lot more complicated, and it'd be more likely to be following the timing. But just because it says you have up to 6 months doesn't mean it has to take that long. You can do this a lot quicker. A major subdivision could take 3 months depending on its complexity. The minor ones can take a month basically to get through it if it's a family month. So I've listed out where the sections are in the articles and the pages that you want to look at, 15.3 and 15.18, of where the preliminary plan is detailed for a major subdivision and the final plan. So number 5 is page 15-24, Article 10, the inspections and the enforcement. So this has a nice section in the ordinance that talks about the funds for the inspection and that they'll be deposited with the town prior to the inspection. So the town, in my opinion, doesn't go out and spend its money and then try to bill the developer to get the money and then have to hold off the road acceptance until the bills are paid. This is a much cleaner way of doing things. So you would set up an escrow account, which is in our ordinance 2% of the estimated cost of the improvements. Some ordinances had 3 up to 5. We were low, but our ordinance hasn't been amended, so that makes sense. It may not keep up with construction costs. The one item that wasn't defined is it doesn't say who decides on what the improvements are. So I think the plan, unless we change that, the planning board would have to make it clear. Most developers would want it to be the engineer because they would be working with an engineer. Some of the ones in which the people build it themselves might want to use their own estimates, and you'd have to require them to get an engineer's estimate to make sure it's done correctly. Because there are a variety of subdivisions across the state of Maine that never got finished, and often it was because they didn't understand the costs that were involved with the project. Your ordinance is really good in that it requires a written certification signed by a professional engineer certifying that the public way meets or exceeds the design requirements of the regulations. So this is really good, and this comes up to the point where people were concerned, and rightly so, because somebody can go out and develop the whole road, do all the work, and then the legislative body, whether it's a town council or a board of selectmen, can say, no, we're not going to accept the road. And then you have this nice, well-built road, probably better built than town roads at this point in most communities. but there is no way to require the legislative body under the law when the project is approved by the subdivision to approve the road. It's something that can't be done ahead of time. It has to be done at the time it's finished, certified, however the town certifies it, and then it's brought into the council. But if you have an orderly process, and I would think you would want the road accepted if it was built correctly, because it would be in really good condition and easy to maintain, and you have all your nice new houses on it. However, that is a legislative body question in the end. It's something that we just can't say it will always be accepted. But generally, if you have a process and inspections are done in a timely fashion and in the right way, and I've got some paperwork later on that shows like an inspection schedule, which was really good. So that was an item that we had brought up before, because those are the major items involved with the subdivision on the costs. And water and sewer, if you did have it, but most of the subdivisions will likely be out in the country, and so water and sewer will not be town water and sewer, likely. Number 6 is page 15-26 in Article 11, the performance standard. And this is something that we were going to go through, not at the meeting, but ourselves. The performance standards in our ordinance for the subdivision, Town of Pittsfield subdivision ordinance, is 37 pages long. It does seem really long, and it's very detailed. And I think generally you skip over a lot of them. Some of them aren't applicable for your smaller subdivisions. The criteria that's in the state law that says you need the performance standards is less than 4 pages. So it may be that we could delete some of this language. It might be a bit excessive if we wanted to encourage subdivisions, but all the categories are correct that's in your ordinance. So that's something we have to dig into a little bit more in some of the other ordinances. I looked at a variety of ordinances, and ours was really detailed. So I did put some exhibits together which are attached to this review. I mean, in all, your ordinance is very good. It's just very lengthy, and you have to read it a few times to acquaint yourself with it. In terms of the handouts that I put with it, they're out of order just because of the size. Exhibit A is the criteria listed in the state law that you have to follow. So I put Exhibit A up in the right-hand corner of the next page, and it begins at middle of the page where the asterisk is on 4404, which is the section of the state law review criteria. And by doing this, you won't need that whole lengthy document I gave you. You'll have just these few pages, which would be helpful to you in knowing what the criteria would be. So Exhibit A goes on with the page numbers in the land use regulations at the bottom from page 55 through to 58, where Exhibit A ends, and I marked where it ends. So these are the criteria that have to be in your regulations. The second exhibit is Exhibit B, which if you go down to 7 and 8, these are the items that I found to be interesting in the state law. But again, instead of having to have that huge 50 to 60 page document, I've taken out the few pages I referred to at prior meetings and put them here with this letter. I think it would be helpful if we looked at cluster development. And something that's been brought up before, but it is complicated and we haven't gotten to it, is age-friendly community, because we're all aging. The whole community is aging, the world is aging. And then impact fees, not because I believe we should be have any, but if we're going to do a thorough review of the subdivision ordinance, we should look at those. And those are the impact on the community of, let's say, a 200 housing development came in. That's not going to happen here. But if you had a 20 or 30 each year, that would be good, very good. Other items that I found in that state planning law where the subdivisions were embedded in the land use regulations was conditional zoning that you can look at, contract zoning, and then there's a section that would be very good to adopt about code enforcement officer being provided the authority of disability structures permits. And often when somebody is aging in their home or becomes disabled and needs a handicap access, if the lots are close together, they don't have the setback that's required. So the person has to either hire somebody or head off to the zoning board of appeals to prove that they should have that setback waived so they can put in their handicap access. And so that is a lot of work for people. And let's say it was myself and my lot line is really close and I want a handicap accessibility because my leg hurts and I can't get up and down the stairs. I gotta go down the access, which is kind of true. But in any case, instead of going to the zoning board, having to go through all that work, having a public hearing and everything, you can put a section in the zoning ordinance that allows the building inspector to check into the situation and issue a permit. And so the elderly person or the disabled person or the person that has got hurt that needs that handicap accessibility would be able to do this in one step, which would be very user-friendly. So that would be something to consider.
It's always an urgent situation where
Right.
somebody makes that request.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told them to go ahead and
Well, I think we better put something in there so you can do that. If we're going to go through and amend things, we might as well pick up.
the person was in, like, my mother's coming home from the hospital, we need this right away. And well, when I tell them it'll take 3 weeks to get approval, that's not satisfactory.
Yeah. Well, if this is put in here, then you'll be totally covered here. And it will be in there so people can see it when they read the ordinance, and then they'll know that they can get it too. Instead of thinking that they got to go to the zoning board, which has been a deterrent in some cases. Not because the zoning board's not nice, but it's a fact of having to go to a meeting that's sort of like a little legal meeting. Often people don't want to do that. So that's one that we could, if we're going to amend the ordinances, might as well pick up anyway. And then Exhibit C are excerpts from other community subdivision ordinances. And I had looked at about 12 ordinances and ended up with Gray, Wilton, Bridgeton, Hollowell, Mount Desert, and Glenburn as being well-written ordinances, or more common sense ones, although some were more detailed than the others. And so in Exhibit C, I marked up some sections you can take home and look at about cluster development, because we talked about how can we make the development more affordable for the developer, and also make it more friendly for the people that are going to be in it. And clustering is one way to do that. And that might be one way to address the little homes too, your tiny homes, if you had a subdivision of those altogether. And so Exhibit C goes on for several pages. And I did mark at the end, Town of Glenburn, excerpt N, and their number at the bottom is page 57. So Article 9 of Glenburn's ordinance talks about cluster development. The next excerpt that I put in was Gray Main excerpt, which talked about the performance guarantees. It was set up very nicely. It's got an asterisk here. Talks about the different guarantees. It's easy to read and a nice formatting. And that goes on for a couple of pages. But the reason why I put that in is that it has an actual section, which I put an arrow by, 401.11.5, phasing of development. This is something that's not listed in your ordinance, and it isn't usually listed in ordinances. But it talks about having major subdivisions and putting them into phases, which I can testify to from coming from a community that had many subdivisions going at once, that sometimes people bite off too much and then try to build out way more than they can, and phasing it would have been very helpful to them. And we may have suggested it at the time, but had no language to require it. And so phasing a major subdivision might be a way to make it affordable for a developer. So that goes on for a couple of pages. And then we get to the Gray Main excerpt at the top. There's just one section in here that talks about the Lot Owners Association and makes covenants for this and draft articles of incorporation And if you had a major subdivision, you have to assume everything's gonna go well, but if it doesn't, sometimes the people are left out on their own, like down at Estelle Street, which has been there for decades in the condition that it's in. And they don't have a lot owners association, and maybe if they had, that would have been helpful for them. That's one page. And then the next page, Hollowell, Maine excerpt, there's just one page. There's a very nice list of inspections for the improvements listed under number 2. And so these are the improvements when the inspector goes out. When do they inspect? And this lists just when they should inspect. Upon completion of the excavation of the roadway and the preparation of the subgrade, have an inspection. During the installation of the road subbase, including drainage improvements and structures, have an inspection. During the paving of the road, have an inspection. Upon the completion of the improvements, have an inspection. And then following everything's finished with the looming, seeding, and cleanup. And then usually at the end, these are things that the staff can run out. You don't need the engineer to check them over at that point, because you can tell if it's loomed and seeded and cleaned up. And the last one that I have is Mount Desert Island. They had a really nice design chart on the road, so rather than reading through the whole ordinance like ours and some of the others, you can see right off a little chart that says what your minimum right of way is, what your maximum is, the grades and everything. So that would be helpful to somebody looking at the ordinance. And then Mount Desert, last section on the next page, is a cluster and workforce subdivision. So they had some sort of subdivision where they brought in homes to help out the workforce so they could live on Mount Desert Island. It would be a little bit different. But they did have some interesting requirements in here. It is very interesting to read. So that ends the information I put together. I do have one ordinance that is extremely well written. I had so many sections in it that I figured, I don't know if you want to have this massive ordinance from Bridgeton, but it's a very nice ordinance. It's just overboard, but it has some nice sections in it. So rather than make, this huge copy for you, I could send it to you in a PDF and you could read through it and see. I can put asterisks by the sections that seem good. This is a very nice ordinance. It's a very old one. It's been around since 1994. They've amended it at least 12 times, or maybe more. Yeah, more than that. So they've had it for a long time. I kept working on it as development took place and they found things. So it is very lengthy. I wouldn't recommend adopting it, but it has good sections. So this is my basic information to help you along here in the review of the subdivision ordinance. So I picked out items I found in the better ordinances I found at MMA on their town websites and on the internet. I picked out those sections, and then we have one ordinance that I will send to everybody in a PDF, Bridgeton's, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
A lot of information to digest.
Yes, and Kathy is not an expert on anything. I'm just a generalist. So you're getting enough information to get yourselves in trouble here.
Anybody want to say anything?
I have a couple of questions, actually. Is there anything in our existing subdivision ordinance that specifies that only single-family units could be done? Or could you have like a mixed-use space, like a mixed commercial on the bottom and then apartments on top?
I think we have to look at the zoning ordinance too, because that's where the zones are set up.
Right.
You have a planned unit development listed in the zoning ordinance, so we have to take both of those together. But you have multi-family dwellings now in subdivisions here in town.
Right.
That were built way back.
Right.
So you can have those. Whether you could put businesses upstairs, likely you could, depending on the extent of what you'd be doing and what the coverage would be for the subdivision. But we would need to read the zoning ordinance along with the subdivision together.
Okay. And then So I'm gonna reference a specific page here, and I'm gonna try and read off. I don't know if you have your whole book with you or not. Page 1563, section 13.9. Let's scroll down to it here. So basically, it's a section that's talking about improvements guaranteed. Performance guarantee shall be tendered for all improvements required to meet the standards of the regulations for construction of the streets, et cetera, et cetera. Does that include maintenance, like ongoing maintenance of those structures as well?
No, it doesn't, and in the Bridgeton ordinance, I believe that's the one that has nice language on maintenance afterwards. The one problem with the performance bonds is if you know the developers and they're in the area, I mean, we've had massive projects here done by Chimbro, but we know that they'll be taken care of. But with a performance bond, if the payment is not made in year 3 or 4, you know, we may or may not get a notice, and then all of a sudden there's nothing.
Right.
And then you have to go fight for it. So on the improvements, having monies for later on for maintenance is very good.
Yeah. Because what I'm kind of concerned about, one of the things I'm concerned about with subdivisions is they build these beautiful roads, as you talked about, or plan lays out these great roads, and then all the single family housing comes in, and at the start the houses are in great condition, and you know they're providing a lot of value to the tax base. But then you have 1 or 2 years where you have to do a bunch of work to the roads, and that just wipes out essentially the tax revenue, and now the town's in debt. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can include in the updated subdivision ordinance some sort of requirement of like demonstrating that the subdivision is not going to end up costing the town in maintenance more than it's bringing in tax revenue. I don't know if there's a way to do that or not.
Within a certain way, the item that is usually the issue is the stormwater detention basins. In fact, you have to make sure when the roads are turned over to the town that the stormwater detention basin is too. That has happened to some towns. Those are the items. The stormwater is usually the issue. It's not so much the road base or the paving, because you get further. You get, if it's built properly, and it'll be built better than a town road. It'll last for a long time as long as we give it regular maintenance and it was done properly and inspected. The issues, in my experience, has always been the stormwater, the culverts, and if the detention basin is not taken care of and cleaned out on a regular basis, then all of a sudden you have problems. Yeah, but yes, you can look at that. Bridgeton has a long-term maintenance section under performance guarantees.
And you said you'd send us that PDF?
Yes, by PDF, just by its link.
Thank you.
I didn't think you wanted another 50 or 60 pages tonight. You have to sort of balance that as to what will be a reasonable cost for the subdivision, and then what will protect the people in the subdivision and the town.
Right.
But people in the subdivision, 10 years down the road, aren't gonna want a huge increase in taxes to cover something that way.
Yeah, you have, it's a balancing act.
Because, you know, now if there's a problem in the industrial park with flooding or drainage, you know, they don't get taxed more than someone else.
Nor necessarily should they.
No.
You know, basically, if the roads are built to the specs, they're supposed to be built to and inspected. At that point, once they've been accepted, you know, the responsibility goes to the town 100%.
The road is usually not the issue, it's everything around the road.
But that's not the case here, though. It has to go through the town council, right?
Right. You know, once the town council accepts it, and it's a town road, everything associated with the road.
So someone buying a new home in a new subdivision doesn't know yet if they're gonna be paying association fees or until, yeah, that's right.
Well, if the road's gonna be accepted by the town, then it wouldn't be an association.
But you don't know that until it goes, when are you gonna know that? You should know that at the very beginning.
Right. I think so,
Planning
too.
this, it should be, you will take the road over or you're not, then the potential home buyer could say, you're gonna be paying taxes and you're gonna be paying an association fee.
Yeah, see, that's where the legislative body cannot approve it ahead of time, it's no guarantee. So if you have a good inspection process, your percentage of it being approved by the town council or board of selectmen is higher.
Higher, but not 100%.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
again,
you know,
like, no.
basically, what I could see happening is things are done the way they're supposed to, it's not accepted, and you're not gonna have another one built.
Correct, that is
You know,
correct.
essentially, you're gonna scare everybody away, then.
That would be the end of that, yeah. It's unlikely it would happen here, but I've seen it happen in other towns. And then if the subdivider does not follow the road standards and creates issues, then it becomes more difficult to have the road accepted.
See, and I don't think it's fair to ask the developer to post a bond endlessly to maintain, because that goes into your bonding capacity, you know, and then what do you do? You know, you're responsible for that forever?
It's all a balancing act.
Yeah, but you know, again, in my opinion, you should be able to have that decision at the beginning, when you're in front of the planning board, is the town going to take this road over, I built it to spec, then the town should take it over.
I might agree with you in theory, but legally it's not allowable.
Is
Anywhere?
there a way to have the developer, I can't think of a better word, but there's probably a better word, give the money to the town to build the road and have the town build the road right up front? Because then we wouldn't have to go through that process, right? It would be a town road right from the start.
I don't, because of the cost of building a road, I doubt that anyone would want to do that. I understand where you're coming from. I haven't seen it done that way. I have seen water and sewer put in that way, just because they're connecting to the town's water and sewer. And it was a district, and sometimes a district is involved. Here, we own everything. Generally, the developer, I think almost 100% the developer builds it out. But again, if there's a good process, the person comes in, their plans are all in order, they have a good engineer, they follow the inspection process and don't start filling in the road with gravel, not having a subgrade looked at. These are all things that I've experienced in the past. You know, that's where the trouble begins. And so then people start getting worried about the condition of the road and wonder what else are they doing? Are they putting rocks in the road, or is it good gravel? And so if they have proper inspections, the town staff sort of promotes the road, you know, process. But there's no guarantee in the end. And so far I've only had one town had 17 subdivision roads all at the same time. That was interesting. Others, there's been 10 or 12 over a period. So I've only had one subdivision road out of probably 50 to 60 not approved. I had two highly developable towns that things were just sort of out of control. Too many subdivisions were going in at once, but it worked out in the end. Only one road was not approved, and that road was not approved because the developers didn't fire their engineer. It was a family operation. They went out and built it, and then had to dig it up again. And it's still, I checked when I started this, it's still not accepted by the town. But it's rare that this happens, in my experience. So I've had almost close to 60 subdivision roads having two really highly developing towns, Thompson and Hermit, both high developers for subdivisions. And then my other town was Bodenham, and there were a lot of subdivisions there too, more country ones. Only one road was not accepted of all the roads. So it's rare that this happens.
But you're saying legally, a town council will not,
They could say, no, we're not gonna do it.
but they could say, they could also say yes during the planning phase. When you're saying legally, they can't say yes.
No, it has to be finished and then brought to them. So, once it's done, it goes to the council.
Okay, so you say it's done, it met all the specs, everything, then,
Yeah, we have a certificate from the engineer, which should be hired by the town, not by the developer, just so that it's clear cut and clean. It would be clean anyway, but the perception works out better. It's brought in, and have all their inspection certificates, the engineer certifies it, the staff says it's built to town standards, and should be, and recommend it be accepted. I've only, of all those subdivisions, only recommended that one not be accepted, and it was pretty obvious why. Didn't meet any standards.
But that's easy to do, you just do gradations on gravel, you do compaction tests.
Yeah, it's not hard to do.
Yeah, it's easy to do if you have someone that's
Of course.
on it, yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not hard to do at all.
Right, yes.
So, as long as you, and if you have the inspections, like you put the list of inspections in your ordinance, it makes it clearer. You just keep making it clearer and clearer. You explain it out during the planning board process. It's an education process and communication. I like the phasing part, because sometimes people will try to do a huge subdivision, and if they did the first lots that are connected to the town road, sell those ones off, and they can head to the next group and move it down, you know, toward the back of the subdivision. What often happens in the subdivision is if you offer the whole thing, the people want to build their house up back at the end of the road first. First lots to sell.
Yeah, I drove through one in North Bangor last fall. They've got a road going in, and it winds in probably half a mile, and you see one or two houses near the beginning, and then you have to drive all the way to the other end
To the end.
get to the houses.
That's what always happens. Yeah. Phasing helps to prohibit that.
Possibly because people want to be as far away from the main street traffic and things.
Does a roadway in a new subdivision have to be paved? You know that?
From what I can read,
Yeah, it looks like it does, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
to be taken over by the town, yeah.
Yeah.
But another thing that I keep thinking about was the fact that we're supposed to discourage growth in the C4 area. That's a requirement of our comprehensive plan, and if you read our ordinance on subdivision, we must build according to the comprehensive plan. I'm wondering if that needs to be addressed to be changed.
You said what, discourages growth?
Yeah, our comprehensive plan says we should discourage growth in the C4 rural area.
But it allows growth in C4.
I think you gotta take that all,
Well,
down.
the same thing where they want you to identify prime farmlands,
Right.
and then they say, well, okay, do whatever you want now.
Yeah, you're definitely, okay, you do whatever.
Well, I think what they're trying to do is discourage a sprawl, and that is one thing a subdivision would contain. It wouldn't say you could just go in there and just build houses willy-nilly.
Right.
It would say, this is a defined area, this is where the houses can be built, and this will discourage that sprawling, you know, look like driving over Cincinnati or something, flying over Cincinnati, just looking at all the houses everywhere.
It's too bad that's in there, but I understand why it should probably be clarified a bit more. I'm sure they never meant to not have any growth in the rural area, because then there would be no growth.
Yeah,
Because
that's-
the
and that's-
interior area is filled.
I think that's the big issue is, they're worried about sprawl, but you can't just not do anything. You can't do nothing. And
Right.
because then you'd have no growth, you'd have no movement in your town, and the town would eventually just,
That's what we want to prohibit. But just because it says discourage growth doesn't mean you can't have it. Because if you met the conditions of whatever the ordinances are, subdivision ordinance and whatever else, anything under the zoning ordinance, and if it's in shoreland, which hopefully it wouldn't be, then you would be able to go forward with your subdivision.
But discourage, the word discourage
I
is
know.
an action, it's an action word.
In the
So,
comprehensive plan.
Yeah, it's not abstract at all, it's, maybe that word could be modified to not be so directive.
No, I understand. And that's something the planning board can recommend. So this is the information I have for tonight. I didn't want to have this 50-page ordinance attached here. Oh, 55 pages attached to the rest of your information. But the Bridgeton ordinance will come to you in a PDF shortly. We can skim through it, pick up, I'll asterisk the sections that look interesting.
How long is that document, Catherine?
It's 54 pages.
Okay.
So don't hit the print button.
Yes,
I'm gonna hit the print both sides.
So that gives you some basic background on a review of the subdivision ordinance, and then from a review of other subdivision ordinances, interesting sections that we might want to look at in the context of our ordinance, and then gives you some different concepts, like the age-friendly community. We might want to add some items into the subdivision ordinance to encourage subdivisions in the interior of town, or smaller houses. This is where the tiny houses could come in. I know people will say that, well, I don't want a tiny house next to me because it will make my value depreciate. I'm not sure that that's true, but you could have a subdivision of tiny houses where everybody would be of a like mind. That would be an interesting one.
It'd be small ones.
Little tiny houses. That's what we all need now.
You know, look, when you get outside of the city, you can have a $350,000 house next to a trailer. You know,
I know.
as you go through Maine, so.
Oh, yeah. So any other questions or comments? Hope I gave you something to think about.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody got anything else to add to it tonight?
So we'll go home and study some more and do some training, and
I got a feeling, yeah.
so we're on for the 24th for the MMA training, and we'll get something from them.
Yes,
for the-
we'll sign you up and make sure there's plenty of room. I believe there would be. We've got quite some time till then. You'll get a confirmation in your email. And if you don't, contact Steve or myself.
Sure.
And then we'll get the information on the, making sure that the schedule fits for Joel. And by then, from reading the subdivision ordinance, you'll have some questions, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, there's some good food for thought, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised. I went through, I would say, a little bit over 16 or 17 ordinances, and the ones I read off, there were about 6 that had some good sections in them, and the Bridgeton one seemed the best, although it's overly wordy. It was a little restrictive.
And we don't want to do that.
No, we don't.
Plus a couple lawyers in there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Could I get everyone to do me a favor? On your desk is your name. If you'll just slide your name off of there, the draw, underneath it is the person that normally sets
Oh,
it.
it's already on there. Okay.
I've just got one over the other, so we're going to pull the top one
Easy
off.
as that. I was ready to look hard in the drawer.
Well, that's probably a good idea, because these ones are all around the room.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, workshops don't require a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'm not supposed to do that.
Well, she's doing it to make a point.
I'll put the time down so we put it in the notes.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Catherine. That's very
welcome.
helpful.
Change it out.
Have a nice evening.
You too. You too. I haven't talked to Mike, and things going all right?
Thank you.
With Fred and...
Yeah, Fred, Fred and I went over some stuff on